Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Forecast. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking every club's transfer window. I'm going to start by ranking the first 10 clubs in this order that you can see today in part 1, and then I'm going to do part 2 on another day and split it over to 2 videos. Anyway, let's start off with Arsenal. I do actually believe Arsenal's transfer window is quite overrated. I've seen a lot of people ranking it in either A or what you would consider a 9 out of 10. If you have a look at their incomings, the Victor Gyökeres signing, I think he's a good player, but I don't really think it suits Arteta's system, and I really don't know if this signing's actually going to work. So for that reason, I'm going to say it's an alright signing. If you look at their other significant signings, you've got Martin Zubimendi. I do actually really like the signing of Martin Zubimendi. Liverpool obviously won them, me supporting Liverpool. I really did like what I saw from the player. My one weakness with him would be, considering they've just lost Partey in that same role, he won't have the physical ability or the defensive ability to cover as much as Thomas Partey did for Arsenal. The next signing, Eberechi Eze, and probably their best signing. He looked a real threat in the first game, and I think he's going to be a really standout player for Arsenal. He can obviously play off the left, he can play in midfield, so I really like that signing. Noni Madueke, I think I really doubted the signing at the start. I'm starting to see where he could play for Arsenal, mainly as the backup for Saka. Now they've brought in Eze, so I do think that's a better signing than I thought. But I'm still putting it down as probably a bad signing, as I think that 56 million euros could have maybe been used on like a Rodrigo, maybe you use it on a better winger, like just something better than just a backup winger for £50 million. I just think it's a waste of money. Moving on to the next signing, Hincapié. I think this is a very good signing, just a loan deal, get him in, and he'll definitely feature for Arsenal, and he's obviously been a very important player for Bayer Leverkusen, so I think they should be very happy with this signing. Looking at their other signings Arsenal have made that aren't actually on there, they've got Christian Mosquera, no problems with this, just 10 million for a backup centre half, not too bad. Christian Norgard, I mean, it's alright, it's just a backup. I really think that they could use maybe a better holding midfielder/midfielder to really make Arsenal into a better side. Like, what happens if Declan Rice goes down? What happens if Martin Zubimendi goes down? Do Arsenal really want Norgard starting every week? And their next signing they made is Kepa. I mean, as long as he doesn't play, that's alright. But as soon as Kepa plays, I think Arsenal could get themselves into trouble. So why have I not ranked this as highly as maybe other people are going to rank it? Well, first of all, I think they could have signed a better striker for Victor Gyökeres that suited Arteta's style. So I either think you have to tell Arteta to change his style or get rid of him, because I don't think Victor Gyökeres is going to work in that style. Eze, I like the signing, but I think they needed Eze and another like first choice winger. So then you can use Eze in midfield, or they needed to sign another like 8 for backup for Rice. So I would have gone with something like Rodrigo, as I said, or a midfielder. And for that reason, I think the window is still a little bit incomplete for Arsenal, so I'm only going to be giving it a B. On their departures as well, I mean, they're just such a bad selling club, aren't they? They could have also sold Martinelli for like 50-60 million pounds, I reckon. I reckon they could have reinvested that. They could have sold Havertz. I know he got injured, but they could have sold him earlier. So I really think that has let Arsenal down as they're selling. They've let go of players and frees like that aren't even included there, like Kieran Tierney. They've had to release Tomiyasu. It's just the selling for me that's a real problem for Arsenal, and for that reason, it's a B. Moving on to Aston Villa. This window does actually feel quite underwhelming, but I'm going to try to take into account their PSR situations. We know they're very limited on how much they can spend, but I still sort of blame this on sort of how much they spend on their wage bill, and that's what makes them limited to spend. If you look at the transfers they made, Evan Gusand, I mean, he started off alright. He doesn't look hugely impressive so far, so I'm going to say that's an alright signing. Harvey Elliott, though, I really like. I think Harvey Elliott is a top signing. Really good player, play off the right, can play in the 10, really good backup for Morgan Rogers. We know they're going to need depth for Europa League. They've also signed Jadon Sancho. I mean, this is a real much miss or hit, not in between. If Sancho can get moving, he's going to be a real good player for Villa, and I do sort of think that might be a risk worth taking. Then they've signed Victor Lindelof. I mean, it's just a transfer and on a free, give it a bit of depth. Very much all Aston Villa can really do. Then they've signed Marco Bizot in goal. He's probably going to be the backup now that it's been confirmed that Emi Martinez will not be joining Manchester United. I do sort of think that they could have used, maybe they could have sold Martinez and then got in a younger keeper and used Bizot as the first choice, because I think he's been reasonably impressive so far. Looking at their departures, Villa obviously letting go of an academy graduate, Jacob Ramsey. I think Villa will that's obviously freed up their PSR situation and allowed them to bring in players like Harvey Elliott. They've loaned out Leon Bailey, and they've also loaned out Baron Shea, who hasn't really had a huge impact. I think Bailey's a bit of a miss, potentially. They also brought Daniel Marlin in, who had a future fee that they paid for Dortmund. Then they've loaned out Ellen Jr., I don't think he was going to play much this year, and they've also let go of Alex Mariano free. Another player that hasn't really featured. I think this is a really average window for Unai Emery. I think he was really hoping for more. I mean, they have kept hold of Morgan Rogers, which I think probably keeps this window, and I've really tried to take into account they really couldn't do much more than this, and for that reason, I'm actually going to give it a C still. Moving on to Bournemouth, and I think a lot of people with Bournemouth will say, oh, their window's got to be shit. They've lost Zabaini, they've lost Huijsen, they've lost Kirkes. They've also made £160 million, and if you also add Dango Atara, they've made another £42 million on a pretty average winger, in my opinion. I know he started well, but he's definitely not a £42 million winger. And I actually think Bournemouth deserve massive credit for getting this sort of money in. And this is the Bournemouth model. It's we sell, but for big money. That's how they always operate, Bournemouth. They've also sold Kepa for $5 million. I mean, he's an average keeper, and I think they've upgraded on him, really. In their incomings, they've brought in Diakate. I think that's a good signing, and he will do well for them. Petrovic, another young keeper. These two signings are very much thinking we could sell them on for more. Same with Ben Doak. Adley as well. He was very impressive at points for Leverkusen. Truffett, who I think so far looks like their standout signing. At points, he's been very good for Bournemouth. They've also brought in a centre-half on deadline day who was a pretty interesting signing because no one actually knew about it. And apparently that was sort of the whole strategy with the signing of the Serbian centre-half from Red Star Belgrade. I unfortunately just can't pronounce his name. I've just had a look and tried to give it a go and I have no idea. For Bournemouth, I'm actually going to give them a B because I think they've sold well and they're brought in well, and I really like the signing as well of Ben Doak. Moving on to Brentford, and I think you've got to look at Bournemouth and Brentford in a very similar matter. Not big clubs, but clubs that are very good at buying low and selling high. Now the question are, have Brentford actually brought in players and how well have they sold? Well, first of all, they got an absolute maximum fee out of Brian Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa, two very good players for Brentford, but the fact they got 57 million out of Yoane Wissa is very impressive, I think. I think Brian Mbeumo is more of a fair fee, but it's still £65 million about that. That's really good. They also sold Christian Norgard for 11 million. I think this is a bit more of a loss, actually, really, considering they didn't get as huge fee for him. And they also sold Mark Fleckham, but I think they replaced Mark Fleckham with a better goalie and Caoimhin Kelleher. They made the Michael Coyote signing permanent. They also brought in Antonio Milambo in the attacking midfield. Never seen him play, but he'll probably turn out to be a decent player based off Brentford's model. Dango Atara, I've already mentioned him with Bournemouth. I think this is a massive overpay, and this was probably a bit of a mistake in the window in terms of incomings. Caoimhin Kelleher, great signing, really good value as well, £11 million, and Reece Nelson and on loan. Once again, very similar to Bournemouth. I'm ranking this with a B because what do you want them to do? You can't ask them not to sell their best players because at the end of the day, they're a very small club and their whole goal is to stay in the league and keep generating money, and they keep achieving that every year. Moving on to another club with a very similar model. Some say the ultimate at it, Brighton. Brighton have once again sold more and bought for less. They've sold João Pedro for £60 million. I think they could have got more for João Pedro, actually. Now I sort of look at it, he started so well there, but I still think Brighton, that's a very good fee. Estupinan and Simon Adingra, I don't think they were ever really going to do it for them. Estupinan, I think, was a good player for Brighton, and Simon Adingra I don't think was ever going to make it. They obviously loaned out Evan Ferguson as well, just trying to get him some more minutes and try get back to sort of where he was 3 years ago for $3 million. And similar with Matt O'Reilly, he's had a bit of a couple of issues last year at Brighton, so they've loaned him out to Marseille. That could also has the potential, I think, to be a permanent deal. Looking at this incomings for Brighton, they've got Kostoulis in for £35 million. It's a record fee and it's a Greek striker. I have never seen him play, but he'll probably be good. Then they brought in Maxim de Cooper for 20 million. Once again, never seen him play, but he'll probably be good. Same with Diego Coppola. And then looking at Tommy Watson for £12 million. I mean, this is very much one for the future, surely. I don't think he's that good. I think he's a decent player. Obviously, he scored the winner to send Sunderland up, but he already agreed a fee to go to Brighton. I do sort of think maybe this window is slightly worse than the usual Brighton window, and I actually think it is slightly worse than Bournemouth and Brentford's, because Bournemouth and Brentford sold more, and in my opinion actually brought in some more quality players, and that's maybe because I just haven't heard a lot of the players that Brighton have brought in, but I'm going to back myself with that. And I've also predicted Brighton finish reasonably low down the table this year, and for that reason they are going to get a C. Moving on to another team, Burnley, who's had to sell a lot of players. And if you look at Burnley's outgoings, it really has been a problem for them, losing James Trafford and Egan Riley. They were able to keep a Stev, who I'd say is their better centre-half, but losing that core back three, who were really important for Burnley last year in the Championship, keeping many clean sheets, and losing their star keeper, James Trafford, has been a problem. As well, they have lost a lot of goals through Josh Brownhill, and this has really made it difficult for Burnley. I'm not going to really think about that as much in the rankings, because it's not really their fault. James Trafford went for 31 million. They had the buyback. They couldn't do anything about that. Egan Riley went to Marseille on a free. You can't really stop that. And Josh Brown, who was without a club, he didn't want to sign apparently with Burnley. I do wonder, could have they gone back into him and be like, do you actually want to come back now? But maybe he just didn't want to. Looking at sort of their incomings, Ugachukwu, like the signing, he's got a real theme of just sort of ending up at clubs that are near the drop. And that's probably going to happen again with Burnley. Then they've brought in Emmanuel Broja. I mean, I like the ambition of going out and trying to buy a striker, but I don't think he's going to be good enough. And I just don't think he's going to be a starting striker for Burnley. And I just wonder, could have they gone for someone better? Florentino, though, on loan on deadline day, I think is a fantastic signing. He's a big holding midfielder. He's essential for someone that is for a team looking to stay up. And I actually think this is a really big signing for Burnley. They've also brought in Chabona. I don't really know how to say that name, from Lazio for 15 million. I mean, he looks like a decent player. I haven't really seen him play. And then they've got Humphreys, who I haven't really seen play as well. Then they've also brought in Marcus Edwards, who I think is a decent player for a team looking to stay up. Pace in behind, pace on the break, links up probably well with Kyle Walker, I reckon, on that side. So I'm actually quite impressed with Burnley, because I'm going to try and ignore that departures, because it's not really their fault. The three, the main ones, are all sort of unavoidable. So I'm actually going to give Burnley a B. Once again, another B. I think they've actually had a pretty good window. Moving on to Chelsea's incomings and outgoings, and I do think Chelsea had the potential to have a better window than the one they have. I think on the face of it, you'd probably go, oh, that's quite good, oh, that's quite nice. They brought in, obviously, João Pedro. I think that's an excellent signing, probably their signing of the summer. Then they've brought in Esteval, really like that signing off the right, and I think he's a very good player from what I've seen. But this is when you start to go, Jamie Gittins and Alejandro Garnacho. I don't think both of those were necessary. Why are you signing two left wingers who I think are both distinctly average? And I don't think they're much of an upgrade on the potential other left wings that you could use at Chelsea, with likes maybe you could play Pedro Neto off the left. So I don't really think Chelsea have actually upgraded much in their team on the left wing, and I think they were better off maybe using one transfer and getting like Rodrigo. You maybe only signing one player in Rodrigo, basically. Jarol Hato, I think, is a decent signing at fullback for Chelsea. Looking at sort of the departures, Madueke, I think, is a brilliant sale. I think Nicholas Jackson is a brilliant sale, and I think Christopher Nkunku is also a really good sale. I don't know how they do this, as well as João Felix and 28 million for Petrovic. They're just such a good selling club, Chelsea, and this is what sort of pulls their maybe ranking up. But this is the problem. Where have Chelsea not addressed this summer, which they had to? It's so obvious. Keeper. How have Chelsea not brought in a keeper instead of Sanchez? Sanchez has just got a howler in the waiting. He's already made some mistakes in the first game against West Ham. That poor save attempt against Paqueta's shot. That is why Chelsea are going to have problems this season. As well as that, I think they really could have used another centre-half. With Colwell going out, they needed another one. And I know Jarol Hato can play there, but I do sort of wonder, could have they bought one really good centre-back? And for that reason, Chelsea are actually going to get a D, because they haven't actually addressed a lot of what I actually think they needed to. Moving on to Crystal Palace, and I think they may have just saved this from being the first E window. I'm still very tempted to put into E, and I may well change my mind. But why? Why just back Oliver Glasner just a little bit more this summer? They obviously lost Eberechi Eze. I think everyone knew this was eventually going to happen. It was between them and Spurs, and they also lost Odsonne Edouard. But could have they backed Glasner more? Yes. It could have been so much worse, and this is maybe why I'm not so much going to put it into E, is the fact that Mark Gahey was not sold and that was cancelled right at the end of his transfer to Liverpool. If that happens, this is 100% E, and Glasner apparently was even going to think about walking. Now, on the incomings, they brought in Jeremy Pino and Jaden Canvert as like their two main ones, as well as Uche, who's a centre forward, and the keeper. I have actually now sort of thought in my head, this is unfortunately an E window for Crystal Palace. Why not back a bit more? Why not go out a bit more in a couple of positions? Maybe just tempt it. Go for it, Crystal Palace. You're in Europe. You've got one of the best squads you ever have. This was a chance for them to actually push into Europe, I reckon, this year, and they just haven't done enough, in my opinion. The fact they even considered selling Gahey, obviously it got cancelled, is a real concern to me about sort of how Palace are run, because they're planning to replace him with Igor. I mean, he's shit. Like, he's Brighton's fifth choice and a half. There's a reason they were willing to let him go on loan. For me, unfortunately, Crystal Palace, this is an E window. Moving on to a club that has shown the exact opposite of lack of ambition, Everton. Everton have really impressed me this summer. I really didn't expect Everton to spend this much money. I know they had new owners, the stadium was done, they were able to spend again, but I really just didn't see this coming. And I think this is where I'm sort of changing my rankings for clubs, is the amount of ambition you show is really important. The chances you want to do to improve on what you think you already have, but also climb up the table into positions that you really shouldn't be in. And that's exactly what Everton have done. They brought in Tyler Dibling, really talented winger, really like the approach from Everton. At worst, you'll probably be able to sell him on for a lot of money, and he's very much a sellable asset. They brought in Barry, a big centre forward, looks like he'll suit David Moyes down to a T. Then they brought in Kieran Dewsbury Hall, a very talented midfielder from Chelsea. Jack Grealish in on loan. I think this is one of the signings of the summer, really. The fact they got this guy on loan, he is going to shine at Everton with freedom. And as well as that, they brought in Charlie Alcaraz from Flamingo. Looking at sort of their departures for Everton, a lot of players on a free transfers, Calvert-Lewin, Decore, Holgate, just players that you would just say were just Everton. But they've really managed to find and go away from these players this summer, and I am thoroughly impressed with Everton's business. And I really think this could be enough for them to almost push top half, but even into Europe. Moving on from Everton, who are obviously in A, let's go to Fulham. Fulham have really not done enough this summer, and once again, it's that issue of Fulham not showing enough ambition. They could have done way more this summer. They brought in Kevin, they brought in Chukwueze, and they brought in Lecomte. I just think Everton, first of all, they left it so late. And to be honest, I just can't understand why wouldn't you just do a bit more, considering how much money you probably generate. You're not that far off Europe. Show a bit of ambition. Back your manager, Marco Silva. Otherwise, he might decide to walk, because why wouldn't he? He might go, I could go to this club. They promised me £100 million, which is pretty realistic these days for Premier League sides. Looking at their major outgoings, you'd probably only say the only one is Andreas, who's been a very good player for Fulham at points. So for this reason, I'm giving Fulham an E, because it's lack of ambition, in my opinion. That is the end for part 1 of this video. Let me know how I can improve part 2 of this video, but also what are your thoughts on where I've ranked each team so far. If you did enjoy this video and you want to watch part 2, please like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you're able to find the video immediately. Anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye.